Good evening. I don't know whether toughness also means tall and strong or short and weak. But I want to start off by a few protocols. I don't want to do what Professor Yvonne did, which is to avoid the tedious task of greeting everyone and so forth. But I want to maybe just acknowledge a few individuals that are important for purposes of this particular conference. And I want to start in his absence, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Namibia, the Council and Management of the University of Namibia, if there are any government representatives, ministers, deputies, members of parliament, but more importantly our esteemed hosts and partners, the President of the African Consortium for Law and Religious Studies, Professor Peter Koetsen, who I met briefly before I came up here to speak, but also someone else that will be speaking this evening, Professor Cole Derman, who's with the International, I believe, International Center for Law and Religious Studies. I also want to take this opportunity, and I didn't warn him about this, Professor Kofi Kwashika. He may not remember me, but I believe he does. It's very rare for people to forget me. Is that he was at the time, not the dean, he's currently the dean at Legon Law School in Ghana. He was my professor when I was doing my master's at the University of Pretoria and at the University of Ghana at the time. Very, very welcome to you. It's good to see you. From the last time you've put on a little bit of weight in the face. You look, like you should. And so it's good to see you. But also just other members of the steering committee and organizers of this very important Law and Religion Conference, distinguished invited guests, religious leaders, clergymen and women from Namibia and elsewhere, the media, UNAM staff, if they're present, ladies and gentlemen. Over the next 2 days, starting tomorrow, legal scholars, religious leaders and government leaders will share their expertise, knowledge and thoughts on issues pertaining to what appears to be an intersection between religious freedom, belief, conscience, culture, and rights. This space, I imagine, will build on the important foundation that was laid in the 2008 Durban conference that was styled along similar thematic areas. And of course, the 2 previous annual conferences that this particular establishment had. So I trust then that given our own theme of this particular conference, which is religious freedom and religion and pluralism in Africa, prospects and limitations, that we would have done some stock taking. Mr. Chair of Proceedings, I want to proceed my welcoming remarks with what I thought was quite a thought-provoking introduction by Drs. Van der Vever and Christian Green, and I quote, "We believe that at a fundamental level, religion gives law its spirit and inspires its adherence to ritual, tradition, and justice. Law gives religion its structure and encourages its devotion to order, organization, and unorthodoxy. Law and religion share such ideas as fault, obligation, and covenant, and such methods as ethics, rhetoric, and textual interpretation. Law and religion balance one another by counterposing justice and mercy, rule and equity, discipline and love. This dialectical interaction gives these 2 disciplines and 2 dimensions of life their vitality and their strength. Without law, religion slowly slides into shallow spiritualism. Without religion, however, law would forfeit an ethical foundation and gradually crumble into formalism." End of quote. Mr. Chair, as I was reflecting and preparing for what I'm going to be saying, I thought in typical preacher mode, what message do I take to my people today? I realized mine is actually quite simple for the following reasons. 1, It's welcoming. So just say that, Yvonne. 2, no one is allowed to seek clarification, ask for methodology used, or interrogate the soundness of what I'm going to say. So even when our religious leaders continue to tell us the consequences of our wrongdoing or misdemeanor, we continue to do them anyway. And therefore, standing before you this evening was quite easy. But I thought of sharing some general thoughts as we go into serious business in a few hours, and these are: whatever the outcome of this important conference, the dialogue on these related issues will continue now and elsewhere. We must be reminded that no right or freedom is absolute. And even though within the normative framework, our guiding lights are always the protection of health, national interest, national security, societal interest, the bigger question should be, does what we are asking for on religious or other grounds disproportionately harm or burden others? The tensions, collisions, and or complementary nature of the relationship between religion, culture, and human rights is real. It is so real, societies are killing each other, governments are not able to protect and uphold rights, people remain steadfast in their ways. And so with this conference, one hopes that at a conceptual level, the issues of rights, protection against discrimination under the guise of religious freedom should be carefully examined, and our institutions such as the National Assembly, legal drafters, law reform, academia, the judiciary are carefully guided to ensure continued protection of the rights of the other. Mr. Chair, when I say welcome to this beautiful country of ours, I'm applauding the organizers for having chosen Namibia. The opportunities, prospects, and limitations are much more easy to explore when you have a new president, a new set of ministers, new attorney general, a new chairperson of law reform. Everything is new. And that means when you have new ideas and new laws, new findings that you would do at this particular conference, you are likely to be received easily and or well. I avoided, Mr. Chairman, going into a clinical academic discourse as I did not want to create anxiety in our esteemed presenters of various papers ranging from development and rights, homosexuality in the church, freedom of religion, and the meaning of secular states, to name a few. I'm confident that the content and scope of the presentations will make for thought-provoking debate and life-changing propositions. The context of religion, law, and rights must be situated. The dilemma of defining religion or not will be important for the conversation, and the element of choice is sacrosanct. It therefore brings me to a conclusion that the Faculty of Law at the University of Namibia, as a cooperating partner and catalyst of this all-important conversation on law and religion, will continue to be an important partner. And we look forward to dealing with the challenges that we face. I do not know whether Professor Nico Horn has experienced our Seventh-day Adventist students who have certain demands about what they want to know, what they want to do when tests are written, for example, on a Saturday. That's a challenge for the university. And how do we respond to that? There is the question about people who are not necessarily Christian, but have to observe, for example, selling or buying alcohol on a Sunday. There is the all-important issues around observance of religious holidays in our country when we are a secular state. There are the issues around praying at public events, at universities, at the openings of parliaments. For example, when our elections were announced last year in November, we had a very public prayer event. And so when we are thinking about, as a country, how to deal with issues of gender-based violence, we pray as a nation. And the question is, how do we deal with the tensions between what appears to be an imposition, as it were, of a Christian faith on everyone else in a secular state? These are some of the questions I want to believe this particular conference will address. And we're looking forward to a fruitful discussion, and I welcome you to Namibia. Good evening.